For ages, there's been this huge debate, right? Two diets fighting for the title of best for your heart. In one corner, you've got the low-fat diet, and in the other, the Mediterranean diet. So, what actually happens when you pit them against each other in a massive, years-long scientific study? Well, we're about to find out.
For the longest time, the advice was just simple, right? Cut the fat. The low-fat diet was the undisputed champ of heart-healthy eating. But then, along comes the Mediterranean diet. It's all about olive oil, nuts, all this stuff that kind of turned that old wisdom on its head. So the real question is, when you actually put them to the test in a super rigorous trial, which one really wins?
Okay, so to finally get an answer, scientists came up with the ultimate dietary face-off. It's called the Cardio-Prev study. And listen, this wasn't just another survey where people write down what they ate. No. This was a high-stakes, long-term clinical trial built to give us a definitive answer once and for all.
Right. This was not a study where researchers just kind of asked people what they had for lunch. They set up a randomized controlled trial. I mean, this is the gold standard of medical evidence, specifically to see which diet was better at preventing a second heart attack, a true head-to-head competition. And who were the participants? They focused on just over 1,000 people who were at the absolute highest risk. Every single one of them had already survived a heart attack or something similar. And this is so important. The goal wasn't just to prevent heart disease in healthy people, it was to see if you could stop it from happening again. That's one of the toughest tests for any kind of lifestyle change. The big question was, could a diet actually stop history from repeating itself?
And they didn't just check in on them for a few months. Nope. Researchers followed these patients for 7 long years. That long-term view is what makes the study's findings so powerful, so credible. It smooths out any short-term flukes and lets us see the real, sustained impact of these diets over time.
Now, to make sure the results were rock solid, the groups were randomized, to get rid of any bias. And get this, both groups got intensive, personalized support from dietitians the whole time. So this was not the Mediterranean diet versus just do whatever you feel like. It was a totally fair fight between two actively supported healthy diets. The only major difference was the food itself.
All right, so after 7 years of meticulous tracking, 7 years of this high-intensity intervention, what did the data actually show? Who was the winner? Let's dive into the results.
Well, the results were pretty undeniable and statistically significant, which is key. The group on the low-fat diet had 111 major cardiovascular events, and the Mediterranean diet group, just 87. I mean, that's a difference you can literally see right there on the chart.
So when you translate those raw numbers into what it means for your risk, the Mediterranean diet came out way ahead. We're talking about a 25 to 30% lower risk of having another major heart event. That is huge, especially when you compare it to another healthy, actively supported diet. And hey, you don't have to just take my word for it. The study's own conclusion, which was published in the super prestigious journal, The Lancet, leaves zero room for doubt. They put it right out there, plain as day. The Mediterranean diet was superior.
And what's really interesting is that the researchers found the effect was even stronger in the male participants, who, to be fair, made up most of the study group, about 82%. For them, the risk reduction was nearly a third, around 33%, which of course raises a really important question. What about for women?
So yeah, the Cardio-Prev trial was a total landmark study, but it did highlight a pretty common gap in medical research, not as many female participants. So researchers down at the University of Sydney decided, okay, we need to fill that gap.
And they didn't mess around. They conducted this massive review, pulling together data from 16 different studies that included, get this, over 722,000 women. So this wasn't a small look. It was a huge, comprehensive analysis to see if these benefits held true for a really diverse population of women.
And the findings, just as incredible. Women who stuck closely to a Mediterranean diet had a 24% lower risk of heart disease, and, amazingly, a 23% lower risk of death from any cause. This is massive confirmation that the diet is a lifesaver for women too. So this research really provides that missing piece of the puzzle. It confirms that the heart protective benefits of the Mediterranean diet aren't just for men. It is an incredibly powerful strategy for women's health, which helps make dietary guidelines way more effective for everyone.
Okay, so we know what the diet does. It's a clear winner, but how does it do it? What's the secret sauce here? What's the mechanism behind these amazing health benefits? Well, the answer, it turns out, might be hiding in your gut.
You see, inside every one of us is this bustling ecosystem called the gut microbiota. We're talking trillions of bacteria and other tiny microbes. And we're now learning that this inner world of ours doesn't just, help with digestion. It has a huge impact on literally everything, from our mood to, you guessed it, our heart health.
And it turns out that the Mediterranean diet is basically the perfect buffet for our good gut bacteria. It is packed with fiber from all those veggies, fruits, and legumes. It's got these powerful plant compounds called polyphenols. Think olive oil, nuts, even wine. And of course, those healthy fats, especially from extra virgin olive oil. This stuff isn't just good for us. It's like a superfood feast for our microbes.
So here's how that connection works, step by step. First, you eat these amazing Mediterranean foods. That, in turn, nourishes what scientists are calling diet-positive bacteria, your little inner allies. These happy microbes then get to work and produce all these beneficial compounds like short-chain fatty acids. And then, these molecules get absorbed into your system where they go to work reducing chronic inflammation, which is a key driver of heart disease, and they directly protect your cardiovascular system. It's this beautiful, positive chain reaction.
All right, so we've seen the rock-solid evidence, we've explored the fascinating science. Now let's get to the most important part. What does this actually look like on your plate? How do you put this into practice? Let's break it all down.
Okay, check out this table from the actual CardioPrev study. It shows the differences so clearly. Just look at the olive oil, 4 or more tablespoons a day in the Mediterranean group versus less than 2. See, the Mediterranean diet isn't afraid of fat. It just insists on the right kind of fat, the kind you get from fatty fish, nuts, and of course that extra virgin olive oil.
So the key here is to think in terms of principles, not a bunch of super rigid rules. Make extra virgin olive oil your main fat. Easy. Load up your plate with plants, fruits, veggies, whole grains. Choose fish and white meat over red meat more often. And make things like legumes and nuts a regular part of your week. It's a really flexible, delicious, and as we've just seen, an incredibly powerful way to eat. So the evidence is it's overwhelming. From that intense 7-year showdown to the deep science of our own gut bacteria, the conclusion is really powerful. Food isn't just fuel, it's information. It's a tool that can fundamentally change our health for the better. And that leaves us with one last big question. Could your very next meal be your most powerful medicine?